Welcome to Aggressor Adventures. Meet Vice President of Operations, Larry Speaker.
My life actually began here in the South, in Hilton Head, South Carolina. My parents both lived there. My dad ran a construction company. And technically I was born in the hospital in Savannah, but I look back at some of my childhood photos and everything. There's me laying on the tide pools in the water with my mom, enjoying the beaches in the South.
Larry reflects on his early childhood.
Our family stayed in South Carolina in Hilton Head until I was probably around kindergarten or first grade. My father then took a job with Georgia Pacific Plywood, where we moved to Savannah. And then from there, he was put on a management track where that's what actually took us out to Colorado initially. And then we started moving around a little for training there and grew up a little. And so I think I did like first and second grade in Colorado. Then we went out to Sacramento, California for a year, so it might have been third grade. And then back to Colorado after my dad left Georgia Pacific. He went to a mobile home manufacturing company, and we moved to a very small town called Fort Morgan, Colorado, where we spent pretty much the rest of my life growing up. Think of a small town, 25,000 people, and you knew you were moving to a big town if it had a McDonald's, and we didn't. We had an A&W drive-through root beer. That was fast food at the time for this small town.
He remembers his early education.
So my early education, like kindergarten, we were in Denver. Then early elementary school, I was in Sacramento, California. And then from probably third grade to junior high, that was in Fort Morgan, Colorado, going up through the school system there. And then when I was in junior high, like seventh grade, you understand how small this town Fort Morgan was? We got a chance to move to Greeley, where my father took a new job there. And Greeley was the big town, because that's where we went to buy our jeans every year at the start of school when we lived in a small town. So I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. We were moving to a town that actually had a mall. And so that was the big town for us. And then I went junior high through high school there. And the other really big thing about moving to Greeley for me personally is that it had an aquatics program. Swimming was always paramount to my mom, that we had to learn to swim from an early age, having grown up in South Carolina and being in the tide pools. She knew how important that was for our safety. So in Fort Morgan, we always took swimming lessons, and I started doing like junior lifeguard classes and stuff through there, and I love the water and swimming. But when we got to Greeley, Colorado, that's where we had a swim team in the junior high school. So I got involved with it, and then got involved with AAU amateur athletics, and ended up swimming competitively year-round in junior high and high school. I was never the champion, I was never the fastest, I just enjoyed it a lot. But it was a really fun social network, because Greeley was still a small town, relatively. There was only 2 high schools, and there was a core group of us that swam year-round on AAU that enjoyed that, but then we were at separate high schools. So when the high school swim season came up, we would compete each other, but you knew your best friends were right there on the block against you, having a lot of fun. Our swim coaches were the high school teachers and PE teachers at the high schools. And in the summer, when teachers don't work, they have other jobs, so all these guys were the aquatic supervisors for the city outdoor swimming pools. So it's natural that we went ahead and got our lifeguard training and then became junior lifeguards working for our swim coaches. So we'd get up in the mornings in the summer, go assist teaching swim classes, and then in the afternoons, as the junior guys on the pool, we got to clean the bathrooms, and then I was the baby pool lifeguard throughout high school. But it was a fun summer job, again, working with our friends, getting to swim competitively in the summer, and just really enjoying that environment.
He loved family times growing up, especially outdoors.
Growing up in Colorado, our family would go on mountain weekend trips to Estes Park. We're in a cabin up there with other families. My dad taught us hunting and fishing. So we would go bird game hunting for ducks and geese and pheasant. And then we would go up on the mountains, went on deer and elk hunting trips with my father, both with rifles and with bows and arrows. That were horseback camping. So just a lot of fun outdoor stuff like that with activities.
Larry had a special affinity that foretold his career as an adult.
It probably goes back to the swimming, because I always loved the water and was good at swimming. Ironically, I was never an athlete per se. My brother's probably more of the natural athlete. I remember in junior high, I went out for the football team one year. Second day of practice, I fell and broke my wrist. So I couldn't really play football. I tried wrestling a little bit, but I was never naturally coordinated on land as well. But as I got a little older and switched to the water, for some reason I had all my coordination in the water. So when you're competitive swimming and learning to do the flip turns of the different strokes, I just always felt really comfortable in the water, much more than I did trying to be an athlete on land. Or, to this day, I can't run that far, but I can probably swim much further just in the water because I'm much more comfortable in that environment.
He fondly recalls his undergraduate days.
I was in a really unique experience in college. I went to University of Colorado Boulder. I was really actively involved in student government within the residence halls and the dorms. So I got to work for that department throughout my undergrad as well, and then they hired me initially afterwards. And I just had some really great mentors there, teaching us about life. And working in the residence life departments, there was a lot involved of counseling and learning to work with different people. Even diversity of learning to work with different types of people in different cultures. One of the things I remember, from early leadership training going forward is when you're looking at a group of leaders in a room and you're all being brought together as strangers to work together, you always have I click with you, I click with you. Who are you? And in the beginning, you were like, okay, I want to work with you because I like you and you're going to be my best buddy. But in a political environment or nowadays business environment, what you came to realize through training was the person over here that I didn't click with is probably the one I need to invest the most time in developing a relationship with, because if we're building a team, that's the person I don't like them probably because their strengths are mirroring my weaknesses, and you're playing off of that. So if there's a way you can go through and figure out a common ground for the two of you in a student government type situation, if we could figure out how to become allies together, you weren't going to stop the two of us because we could steamroll you with our strengths combined. And I think that was an early lesson on for business of being able to apply that to building teams and people you work with.
He met his better half while they were both in the same MBA program.
I got married in 2006. My wife is named Carrie, and we met in our MBA program. We actually met in the MBA program. We didn't date at all through the MBA program. And then after it finished, we were always friends through the program. So after it finished, we started hanging out some. And, with some of the other friends, trying to figure out what we were going to do as our next steps in our career and everything. And that's, for a long time we said we weren't going to date even though we hung out with each other. And then all of a sudden, I guess, somewhere we started dating. So it went from there.
Larry and Carrie share some of the same fun and relaxation pursuits.
My wife and I both love to travel, so that's probably part of what we try and do, to figure out where we can get away, whether it's long weekends or somewhere. We're both big fans of Disney for long weekends there. We love St. Augustine, Florida, which is about a 5-hour drive from us. My wife is a sort of diver, so she'll accompany on some of the trips. She enjoys being on the boats and everything. And one of our biggest passions is actually with our dogs. We have 2 Jack Russell Terriers, and we are part of the Jack Russell Terrier Club of America, where we go and compete with our dogs at dog trials, doing racing or go to ground or super earth tunnel work with our dogs, really showing off the skills of what a Jack Russell was naturally bred for in his hunting and working skills, rather than say a pretty coat or who grooms the best or anything like that. Our dogs are down and dirty, running through the mud and the muck and playing with that. And let me tell you haven't seen anything until you get to an event where there's 100 Jack Russell dogs running, all these little white dogs running on, yipping and jumping and going nutty. It's just an amazing event.
Scuba diving just came naturally to Larry.
I first became involved in scuba diving probably the way I grew up. Like I said, on Sunday evenings, we would watch Flipper and Jacques Cousteau. Like that was something I always really aspired to. And then after I finished my undergraduate at University of Colorado, I was actually fortunate enough for them to hire me full-time to start managing dorms. So that was my first full-time job, is right back where I started my undergrad at. And in that environment, we had the summers off and everything, so I knew scuba diving was kind of one of those things on my bucket list that I really wanted to do. So with that, I knew I wanted to scuba dive, but I had to wait several months till I was able to get time off and everything like that. And I went to my local dive store, and I was probably the most annoying customer you could ever want because I walked in February, to start looking at the equipment and knowing I wanted to do scuba classes, but I couldn't do scuba classes till like April or May. And then I really wanted to do a trip to get certified, so that would be like June. But I was super excited about it. So it's like, I'd be going in there like every other day and asking questions. Like, I'm surprised they didn't throw me out. But that's what got me in there. And then I took my lessons. I bought all my own gear before I even did my own dive trip. I got certified in Bonaire and fell in love with it and went to work for them a few years later.
He reminisces about some of his favorite personal Aggressor Adventure experiences.
I've got a bunch of favorite Aggressor experiences. One of the first ones that I know because I'll say this because it'll drive my wife nuts is I got to do an early on trip with Wayne Brown in the Cayman Islands. And we were on a dive together and he was shooting his pictures and we just got in the right position where I was lucky enough to swimming side by side I was right behind a sea turtle. Wayne was on the other side of it. So it's just this beautifully framed shot of a sea turtle and me behind it. That came out great. And then we got back to the boat and Wayne just couldn't resist. He took the picture off his camera, put it on his cell phone and texted my wife. And it says, "Another lovely day at the office." So my wife has that posted in her office, and when her staff come and talk to her about, well, what's your husband do? It's like, that. He gets paid to do that. So that was just a really fun experience. One of my all-time favorite Aggressor trips is my wife and I both really enjoy our humpback whale trips to the Dominican Republic. We've been on that 4 times. To be able to get in the water and see these majestic mammals come up to you and how gentle they are, that when you look at them in the eye, I mean, literally when we're snorkeling with them, you can be 10 feet away, and there's this 40-foot long whale, and he's looking at me eye to eye, and you look in that eye, and he's like, I know there's intelligence behind that eye. You just see it coming through there. And then here comes the mom, and she's got this pectoral fin. I was like, oh my God, she's gonna whack me with it. I was like, no, gentle lift up right over your head. You just feel the wave of the water pressure passing over you. I was like, I'm in such safe hands. She knows exactly where she's at. If she wanted to smack me out of the water, she could, but no, she's choosing to be here with me and share this space and moment in time. Just a really magical experience.
Aggressor Adventures, for your adventure of a lifetime.